Well, hi there, folks. Welcome back to Mossy Roots Farm. Let's talk about the traps of the older generations. Now, you may say, what in the world? You're just some young kid. You don't know nothing about older generations. You're right. I don't. That's why I can comment on it, because I see the way you guys were raised. I see the way you guys were taught, and I see the flaws in that thought process. So, for example, I'm at my fence line here. I've previously discussed with my neighbor about taking these trees down. They are falling on my fence, on his fence, on everybody's fence, and ultimately they're just plain obnoxious. Now, yes, shade would be nice for the cows, but there's other ways to do that, like planting trees internally of your fence. So, let's do that. But here's why I say the pitfalls of the older generation. We've got this fence line that is technically not on my property. Well, the fence line is maybe on the property, but the trees definitely are not. So, the reason that's important is, what should I do? Well, older generation might say, well, it's not your land, don't worry about it. Let somebody else deal with it. Let the owner deal with it. Well, why would I do that? Don't I want good relations with my neighbor? Well, yeah. So then why don't I help him? Well, it's not yours. Okay, but it would help him, which would help me. So why not? Well, is he helping you? Well, you'd never know. I've always been told you don't get respect, you earn respect, right? I've been told that. So I'm trying to earn his respect by helping him out, by doing things that benefit him, by doing things that ultimately benefit both of us, because this tree line is producing tree branches and limbs that do occasionally fall on my fence, that do occasionally take down my fence line, and it would just ultimately be nice to get rid of all of it. So, why don't we? Well, that's my point. Why don't I help my neighbor? You know, a lot of you guys talk about how great your relationships are with your neighbor, but I guarantee you those relationships didn't get good because you just said, screw him. Guarantee you guys went out and you actually did things for each other. You actually helped each other. You know, if you needed to borrow a piece of equipment and he had a piece of equipment, you know, good. Borrow it and be good. But if you didn't have the equipment, not a big deal either, right? Well, that's my point. Oh, look. You guys see a black cat in the weeds yelling at me? But that's the point. If the older generation says to help your neighbor, but they also say not to help your neighbor, well, that's a little contradicting, isn't it? So explain that one to me. How am I supposed to help my neighbor while also not helping my neighbor? I don't know. It's a good point. So that's what I mean, guys. You got to put yourself last in certain situations, which again is contrary to a lot of popular opinion because, and I've said it before, my neighbor's not going to pay my bills. My neighbor's not going to, you know, come over and just take care of my whole farm for me for free. He's going to want something if he does that. But it's not always about the immediate reward. I feel like that's a lot of the problem. Is even the older generation, they just want an immediate reward. Oh, well, if I'm helping this guy clear his trees, he's going to pay me. No. I'm helping clear trees because these trees could be coming down on my fence. And in fact, some of my trees have come down on my fence, which is why a lot of these get cut down because, excuse me, they fall down. So like this big guy here, he needs cut. He's been dead. Last year I tried pushing over with the tractor. That didn't work. So I'm probably just going to have to cut him down, but I'm going to have to cut him down onto my fence because he's leaning real hard this direction. So again, wouldn't it be benefit? If my neighbor had a fence in here, wouldn't it be a benefit to take it down before it took down our fences, like let's say in a bad snowstorm? You know, if I have to come out here and it's minus 20 and blowing like crazy to cut a tree off the fence, or else my cows get out, that doesn't sound very smart. But what would be even smarter is just simply taking the tree down when it's nice weather. So why don't you? Again, the older generation teaches us a lot. There's a lot of experience, there's a lot of knowledge, but there's a lot of old ways of thinking. You know, they tell you help your neighbor, but then they don't help their neighbor. then they tell you, don't worry about that because that's not yours. But it's like, well, but you said to help my neighbor. So that's why I say the older generations are great. A lot of experience, a lot of life experience, a lot of important knowledge that can be gained. But you have to make decisions on your own. You have to take their knowledge and adapt it to your situation. Because again, I was told by the older generation not to worry about this neighbor's trees. Let him deal with it. But that's wrong. I'm going to deal with it because they're my trees too. Even though they're not on my property, they could come down on my property. They could break my fence wide open, like this cherry tree did here. So why not have help with that? You know, it just doesn't simply make sense. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.